Once a week, Reuben George lights the fire, and people gather for a sweat lodge. His backyard looks over the inlet his people, the Tsleil-Waututh, have forever called home. What he sees on the waters worries him.
We get nothing but blessings and goodness from that water. That's what it feeds us. It gives us good things. And what we should be putting back is the same. And oil is the same.
Once a week, across Burrard Inlet, a tanker collects over 500,000 barrels of crude oil direct from Alberta through a pipe known as the Trans Mountain Line. Much more could be on its way.
It's where we're loading tankers today, about 5 ships a month. With the expansion, we expect that we'll probably go to 25.
Michael Davies is in charge of marine operations for Texas-based Kinder Morgan, which wants to increase pipeline capacity to 750,000 barrels per day. What he sees on the waters is opportunity.
It'll give Canada access to other markets that it can't access today, and more capacity to move oil to California as well as to Asia.
The time had come to start laying pipe.
The Trans Mountain Line was built in the 50s, crossing the Rockies and dozens of streams and rivers, the only line that feeds Alberta crude to the west coast. Nowadays, Alberta's oil patch is anxious to unlock the value of the oil sands instead of selling it on the cheap to the U.S. Next year, Kinder Morgan will ask the National Energy Board to approve a $4 billion pipeline expansion. Getting the crude to tankers means access to higher global prices and hungry global clients.
Shippers have signed contracts committing to move oil on the pipeline for up to 20 years, and there's subject only to approval by the National Energy Board.
This is what we're up against, right? Like, these guys are spending millions of dollars to go talk to a lot of people.
When Reuben George found out more tankers could be coming, he sought out a partner. Ben West, an environmentalist in the thick of the fight against oil pipelines through BC.
To simply call it an expansion or a twinning, I think, is really a drastic understatement of what the level of risk that we'd really be taking on would be.
Construction alone will be disruptive, argues West, in a city that's grown up around the old Trans Mountain Line.
This might be an existing right-of-way and an existing route, but it's through a whole new province. Frankly, I think it's just foolish to even consider bringing this, this very toxic kind of oil, through these heavily populated areas.
He points to Kinder Morgan's recent spills, 200,000 litres at the Burnaby terminal, 100,000 litres at a tank farm in Abbotsford. Then he brings me here.
For many people, this was actually the first time they became aware that this pipeline even existed.
5 years ago, a construction crew hit the line. Oil gushed. Cleanup took months.
The spill that happened here was, as far as the oil industry is concerned, insignificant. I mean, this was a tiny, tiny incident. It lasted like 12 minutes, and not really that much oil was spilled. And you talk to the people in these homes around here and tell them it was insignificant.
Just ask Dina, who rushed home that day to find her house and garden sprayed with oil.
And I see only black, and that house was a fact. They rebuilt that houses, and that people from the house over their new home, they were out of the house for many months before they can move in.
You're concerned about the expansion?
Yes.
How come?
Yes. Because no one was expecting that thing, and these things can happen. The technology is very, very fine, but accidents happen.
Everybody involved learned from the incident. I think we have, as have, I think it was a good example for all contractors in the Lower Mainland. As I said, we've got a damage prevention program where we have a number of staff that are dedicated, about 20 people along the pipeline that are dedicated just to handling ground disturbance activity.
But if pipeline is an increasingly dirty word in BC, tankers are the lightning rod.
Our earth, our water, our lands. There's no price because of our sacred connection that we have to it.
As Reuben George takes his spiritual message to a political stage, a Tsleil-Waututh team takes to the waters to gather science. They're monitoring water quality to build a case that industrial pollution has spoiled their waters, tankers included.
The track record of tankers traveling and delivering oil, it's not good. It's too dangerous to see and to know, and what our relatives went through up north with the Exxon Valdez and what happened and what we see in Kalamazoo and what we see in the Gulf. Those are horrible, tragic things that have happened then.
A different story is told on the tugs that tow those tankers. The crew is proud of a flawless track record in Vancouver Harbour. Much has changed since the Exxon Valdez, says CEO Jonathan Whitworth.
It was a terrible event in Prince William Sound, but can that happen here in Vancouver, and can that happen along the BC coast? Again, I think thanks to ship design, escort rules, increased regulations, doubling of pilots, no, I think this is a safe business and it can be safely done.
Nowadays, tankers are double-hulled. 2 pilots must be on board. It's escorted by 3 tugs, acting like powerful tractors.
If, God forbid, there was a loss of power or a loss of propulsion or a loss of steering, the tugboats act as that power and that steering, and they will keep the ship safe.
Kinder Morgan insists it has no plans to dredge the channel to make way for supertankers. And Michael Davies recites a long list of tanker rules that must be followed.
We have a boom that encircles the facility. The ships are double-hulled, and all the traffic is also monitored by a marine traffic system.
If a spill did happen, an industry-funded response team is on hand with the capacity to skim up to 150 tons of oil.
You keep saying if there is a spill. Yes. There hasn't been a spill. Isn't it pulling on people's heartstrings to say, oh, Stanley Park might be at risk?
Well, you know, basically to say that it's okay to go ahead with this project, you have to assume that there's going to be a perfect track record from now on. And, you know, the thing about oil spills is all it takes is one to change the way that you think about it forever.
So, battle lines are being drawn.
That's bitumen. That's what they process out of the tar sand.
In town halls across the Lower Mainland, 3 city councils already oppose a pipeline project that hasn't yet been proposed.
There's nothing in this for Burnaby except potential damage.
Kinder Morgan marches on, counting shorebirds for its environmental assessment. It touts its work in Jasper National Park as proof pipelines can be environmentally friendly. It's reaching out in community information sessions up and down the line.
We recognize that there's a project this large, there'll be concerns, and we want to understand what those concerns are and try to address them as best we can in the project.
But Reuben George and his people seem in no mood for deal-making.
They're saying that they're meeting the standards of the National Energy Board, but the standards of the sacred? No. You can't negotiate our sacred. We have to follow a better way.
Regulatory approval is one thing. Winning public approval in BC in the face of Aboriginal land claims and environmental protest, that's Kinder Morgan's tanker-sized challenge. Duncan McHugh, CBC News, Vancouver.